Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
Welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I'm Sid Part 2. Joining me today is
Steve Baxi.
And no geek for fun. So
because he's a Greek for boring.
Yeah, Greek for boring, not a geek for boring. He eats euros and shit.
He does. It's super weird. He makes marble statues of himself without arms. I don't understand it.
Anyway, so today's kind of a weird episode. I think I'm going to make the title Our First Comics, but that's also misleading, so no, we're not talking about the first comic we made, though there was once upon a time a script for a Geeky Gentleman comic book, but that was
Let's go!
That was back in the Milan and Zazubar days. Though I will still stand by one joke, which was a bunch of Girl Scouts turn into werewolves, and they're called the Girl Scouts. Stand by that. It's great, and you know it.
You should be embarrassed to say that out loud.
No, it's so good. The design is going to be a big Hulk-like werewolf, but in a Girl Scout uniform. So good. Anyway.
You need help, man.
No, best idea ever.
That was your best joke. Come on now.
No, so fucking good. I don't care. You can't bring me down, Steve, with your negativity. If Tom King did it, you'd be sucking his fucking dick over it. But because it's me, you think you can bust my balls, but you can't.
This is 100% correct.
I'm a comic genius, and you should feel bad. You're just jealous.
Did it in 9 panels, and the Girl Scout stared out the window when it was raining, then maybe.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, today we're doing a review of our very first comic book single issue that we can remember reading. And so I realize that is very ethereal and very well, what the fuck is the point? Especially because all 3 of these are in the middle of a much wider story. And no, I'm not interested in reading the much wider story.
I still haven't. I just kept it that way for my whole life.
Yep. So we're not gonna talk about the issues in the wider context of what's going on in the comics at this time. We're not gonna do any of that. What we're gonna do it it's just a straight up, this book came out this week kind of a review. But also, I want to try to get into what you actually remembered about this book before rereading it, because I'm going to assume that you've never gone back to this, or that if you have, it's been a very long time since you've gone back to it. And so I wanted to try to play that game, go down memory lane of what you actually remembered from this book. So on that note, we've got the 2 issues Steve and I picked, and then Alfie knew he probably wasn't going to join us, but asked us to talk about his book anyway, so we'll be putting that one last. So Steve, would you rather start with yours, or should we start with mine?
I could start with mine if you want. We can just knock that one out real fast, because it's a weird fucking book.
Do
you want me to? Do you want the preamble?
Yeah. Why don't? Okay, because this is one of those situations where normally on Geeky Gentleman, when we're doing reviews, I'm like, no, don't summarize what the thing was. Just assume the people have read it or watched it because, you know, they've come to the review. This is the exception to that. This is, no, please explain what the fuck happens in this book.
So I don't know. I've read this thing like 600 times and I still don't know. It's just like apocalypse happens and Superman's got a long black trench coat and like Superboy is the main character and Wonder Woman's wearing black and Wally lost his legs and Batman's a half robot and Lex is inside of Metallo's head and then they fight aliens and then Batman discovers how to kill the aliens and so they kill the aliens and then everyone is dead except Green Lantern, Batman, Lex, and Superboy and then Superboy is Superman now. And I'm just very confused.
No, Batman dies. Batman dies.
Oh yeah, Batman does die. Batman does die. You're right. Okay. I don't understand this book. I don't understand what the fuck happened. Okay, rewind. When my parents knew that they were having a kid, my dad's first impulse was, I'm going to buy, like, a bunch of shit that represents all of the possible hobbies a 90s boy could want. So, like, there was sports stuff, there was movie stuff, and then there was, like, a stack of comic books. He doesn't know anything about comic books, so he just, like, went to the store and, like, just bought a shit ton of single issues that would have come out in 1994. And then, as I grew up, I just always had, like, that stack of comics. And in that stack was an issue of Ghost Rider 2099, a copy of Batman 10 Nights of the Beasts, and then this issue of this annual of Superboy from 1994. And as a kid, I went through and read all of those, and like I'd been a big Batman fan literally my whole life, so I've always like gone through and read a bunch of old Batman. But this comic, this is the one that I saw and I'm like, oh shit. Comics are cool. I read this thing every fucking day. I used to like trace over the figures on it and like make them into my own superheroes, but clearly just posed like them, and they weren't clever or cool at all. They were just like, what if Superboy except he was color swapped and he was purple? What if Superboy and he was color swapped except he was orange? Like that shit. So this was extremely informative for me because so much of like what I understood as a kid about these characters, sadly, came from this book. And it is part 2 of a 2-part story that was told over the course of 2 books. The fun thing about this was Superboy Annual 1 from 1994, and it was part 2. And I never in my life to this day have read part 1. Part 1 is an issue of Adventures of Superman. And if you remember Eric from the Geekvolution days, one of the things we became friends over is when he was a kid, one of his first comics was the part 1 in Adventures of Superman, and he'd never read the second half. So, like, we became friends over, like, oh, so this is what happens in part 2, and then he would explain what happens to me in part 1. And it was so funny, because I never met another human being that knew what the fuck this story was. It's completely under the radar. I don't know a single human being that's ever read this. I don't know a single trade that this has ever been released in. I don't even know if it's like technically an Elseworld or what.
I mean, it says Elseworld all over the thing on the website. Or when I read it, it's like it's got the Elseworld little.
No, it does. I just mean in the sense that, like, I don't think I've ever seen it in any of like the Superman or Superboy or like Elseworld DC collections. Like, it just seems like this is completely swooped under the rug or something. I've never seen any version of this book that wasn't just the floppy I owned as a child, and it's not good. The art's very strange. The dialogue is atrocious. It just moves around way too quick, and it's bad.
Okay. Can I cut in here? So thing number 1, I told this to Haley the other night. I was like, so we're doing this, and you know, we're reading each other's first comics, and like, you know, I was actually kind of pleasantly surprised how well mine held up. It's not like great groundbreaking Spider-Man Venom fiction, but I liked it. I was not like rolling my eyes at it. Alfie's was fun enough for me. It was very like, you know, 2000s Spider-Man comics kind of thing to me, or I guess just Marvel comics. But it had body horror. I love Spider-Man and body horror. They go together like bread and butter. And then I read yours and like, and Steve's was actually just bad. Like I Steve's was objectively the worst one. So
it's genuinely really bad.
So that's thing number one. This is like it's start off on a low note. That's what they always say, right? This was actually like really hard to get through. And, like, oh my god, everything bad about '90s comics kind of rolled up into one. Really, the only thing we were missing was a Ninja Turtles ripoff. So there was that. Thing number two. I'm a fan of the character, certainly, but not to the point where I don't think you can ever do anything bad with her, even if it's in someone else's book, especially in a context like this of an Elseworlds. That being said, killing Wonder Woman by having her get gut shot in an attempt to stop a bullet feels like the most un-Wonder Woman way to die. The character, whose, like, primary spectacle is that she's fast enough to block bullets with the braces on her arms, which she still has in this comic, by the way, dying because she got shot in the stomach. And I could be like, okay, well, maybe she got, like, surprised, or no, she sees it coming and decides that the only way to stop this bullet is to put her stomach in front of it. A motion that certainly takes more, like, physical effort and like, just work than moving your arm.
It's so dumb.
That one was something special to me, I can't lie.
She dies in service to saving weird green suited eye patch wearing Jimmy Olsen, I assume. I was very confused.
Yeah. That, like, I don't think you've done enough to like, really summarize the plot of your issue, because, like, it starts with Lana Lang visiting the resistance group of the 7 remaining heroes and some regular civilians that have gone underground to fight off this alien invasion. Who,
by the way, everyone is in fucking paramilitary gear. Superman's wearing a black leather trench coat with black boots and shit. And he's got, like, a buzz on the sides. And Lana just strolls fucking over here wearing a dress and heels around the place. What the fuck was that about?
Well, she was a secret ally, is the thing, within the alien government. And I will, credits where it's due. I did think it was quite clever that the way that the aliens were able to rule over and like, stop the Justice League or the heroes from killing them off or banding together and defeating them was essentially by, like, holding cities hostage if they did anything to support the metahumans, the heroes, and I guess villains based on Lex Metallo
yeah.
with Lex's brain. So I thought that was, like, reasonably clever. It's like, okay, so if the civilians help the heroes, then the civilians will be the ones to suffer. I thought that was, for alien invasion, I didn't think that was too bad. So there was that. But anyway, so yeah, you kind of see all the terrible things that have happened. Wally West lost his legs. But he still tried to be the Flash by, like, using a handgun. Green Lantern. This is really funny for 1994 because that means they were, like, kicking around this idea a little earlier. It had already, like, just fucking happened, where apparently one of the cities that the aliens destroyed was Coast City, and Hal Jordan survived. So that was kind of funny. I'm like, oh, maybe someone was kicking around that idea, or maybe this was the fucking comic that inspired it. Who knows?
I'd be very, very surprised if anyone read this and took inspiration from anything.
The kind of, oh no, I could do that better kind of way.
Green Lantern's also really funny in this because he's just, like, so mopey and edgy, and he's got, like, the fucking Ninja Turtles bandana for a mask and shit.
It's pretty good.
It's so 90s.
It is. So anyway, yeah. So Lana comes to visit, and the resistance is planning how to mount an attack when but like the thing they need before they can mount the attack is they need Lois Lane to be safe. Superman doesn't want to make a move until he knows Lois is safe, and Lana has promised that she's found Lois, and they're gonna be able to meet and get her to safety so the Resistance can attack. But then, just as they're about to meet Lana in the middle of fucking Metropolis in front of the Daily Planet, they're ambushed, they're attacked, and it turns out Lana Lang's a double agent, or no, a triple agent at that point, because she's triple agent, and she's betrayed them, and she almost gets away with it if not for Jimmy Olsen seeing what happens, but then she manages to escape, and that was quite something. And then Batman like fucking just KOs Superboy somehow and breaks into the alien headquarters, and in the most un-Batman thing I've ever fucking seen in my life, crashes the mothership into the side, into the suicide slum of Metropolis, and it gives a figure. It's like 34,000 people died in that maneuver. Which just isn't Batman. Batman wouldn't fucking do that. Not that I'm like, oh, Batman would never, but just like, consistently, Batman as a character is not a, the ends justify the means kind of guy. He's your pretty typical impractical superhero where you would rather let the villain win than take anyone's life in his own hands kind of thing. That's just not Batman. At least comic book Batman. If fucking one of the movie Batman, sure, but fucking still. Okay. And then Superman is given the tragic news that Lois Lane actually died 10 years ago, and it was just Lana feeding him that story in the hopes that he'd just like get over Lois and go to her, and that's why she was working with the bad guys all along, which just seems like fundamentally the most selfish fucking shit of all time. I feel bad for you having this be your first Lana Lang story, because that just must have made you hate the character forever, right? Like,
I watched Smallville for 10 seasons, so jury's out on what my opinion on Lana Lang is.
Question: does Lana Lang in Smallville do anything worse than this? The answer should be no, but it is Smallville.
Have you seen Smallville? That show is fucked up.
Yeah. So that was quite the time. And in the end, they managed to defeat the bad guy and save the day, and they're working on rebuilding society. And Lex Luthor's still in fucking Metallo's body, and they make it like they don't do it the whole time. It's only at the end of the book in like the peacetime where Superboy is now the official Superman because Superman died in the process. But like he's talking with Metallo on a fucking Metallics on a fucking rooftop, and like they start drawing Metallo to look like Lex Luthor.
Yeah, they give him his head.
Which, that's not how that works.
Now, I will say, there is very little about this where I can go back and say, yes, this is where my taste comes from, because it just quintessentially is not. Mm-hmm. But the very last section of it, the last of 2 or 3 pages, where Superboy is now Superman, and he's got the classic costume, but he's got that little 90s earring going on the side. And the idea that all of the old heroes would die off and the kids would kind of take over and replace them, and like you don't have evil Lex Luthor anymore, now you got Metallics. You don't have the Green Lantern Corps so much in this, but you've got like Hal Jordan, but he's darker and edgier now, and he's got like the grays on his head that he has in Emerald Twilight. And you've got Superboy replacing Superman. That became a big thing for like my entire life, where I've always loved the idea of just doing stories where the legacy characters are just the characters now. And I think that's a thing that we did for a long time in the past that fell out of favor when the legacy characters of that time became the new standbys. And so we just refuse to do it now. But I really do like the way that ends. And a part of me as a kid really wished that there was like another issue of this somewhere, that the story was continued somewhere, that there was just a trade somewhere of like Superboy is not a Superman in the post apocalyptic wasteland that was created by this. But that does not exist, unfortunately. I do want to also take a minute and mention the art in this book is not good, but that's because there's like 8 artists on this book.
I love it.
There's like people who do like 2 or 3 pages at a time, and then people all over. Some of them are very good and people that I like a lot. Like Luke McDonald's in this, and Andre Parks is in this. So like there are like talented people sprinkled throughout a writer that I do not know.
Okay, hold on. I'm just looking into this. So, Superboy Annual #1 came out in July of 1994, according
That
to
sounds about right.
the internet. And okay, Emerald Twilight started in March of 1994. So this is like so that means that Emerald Twilight very possibly could have not been finished. And maybe Emerald Twilight's pretty short. But so like I guess this was like kind of a quasi-reaction to Emerald Twilight from the HAL stands.
Well, I don't even know, because at that point you got to think about like writing these things in advance and cover dates versus issue dates, where they probably were doing them at the same time, it sounds like.
Yeah, I don't know. That's really funny. Or they knew Emerald Twilight was going to happen, and like they just, oh, it's an Elseworld, so here's a slightly different thing. I don't know. It is funny though to see that. Yeah, you're right. It is kind of the baton passed kind of permanently, and that is something you're really into in comics, and we don't do it very often. But it is like a nice little feather in your cap kind of thing.
Yeah, no, I enjoy that. For a minute when you suggested this topic, I'm like, I don't have this comic anymore. I should go and like rebuy myself a copy because it was like part of my childhood. And then I read it. I'm like, you know what? I'm good. I'll be alright.
I really think you should.
I don't know if I need this.
I think you should. I think like the cringe is part of the memory that makes it fun.
Maybe. And like the cover kind of slaps too if you're like a 90s kid. Like, what the fuck is going on here?
I think you should, Steve. I think that every comic fan should actually still own their 90s, their original first issue. I think it's a fun thing to have. If you can like look at that and just go back to it randomly, I think that's a good time. I think you should go buy it in hard copy. You should put this on the wall with all the other like really important books that you've got on display. It would look so out of place, but it's got like the fun story behind it. Like that's the charm of it.
No, I mean, it absolutely does. I can buy it on eBay for like $6 apparently, so
yeah.
No one was clamoring for this.
Yeah, no, this isn't like this. This is, I think you get a feather in your cap for getting like the most exactly what you'd hope your first comic would be. It's not something good, right? It's something like just trash. And I really love that about it. It's
because if I pick like the other two that I remember, right, like Ghost Rider 2099 #1, or like 10 Nights of the Beast, like those are competent stories. Like Ghost Rider 2099 #1 isn't great, but like it's a first issue. It sets up the concept. It's very gimmicky, but of the time. And then 10 Nights of the Beast is just legitimately a good Batman story. So like we wouldn't have anything to say about those.
I don't know. This is a good time. Is there anything else you want to talk about with your very first comic book?
Not off the top of my head. You know what? Superboy in his own series being basically a teenager, and Wonder Woman being a full-grown woman in the beginning of this book, where he just like is sparring with her and then kisses her and calls her Wonder Babe. I'm like, that's where the MILFs came from. Okay, I remember now.
It's interesting because, like, he's actually not a teenager at that point. He's a grown-ass man, which makes,
correct.
like, those kind of moments much less endearing and much more, like, very inappropriate. Like, not even by modern standards. Like, nah, he legitimately, like, just went for it, and he's a grown-ass man. That's not okay.
You know what's also funny, too? Where, like, Lex Luthor, presumably by the end of this, Lex Luthor is kind of the mentor shepherding in Superboy to being Superman now because he's a good guy. And this is several years before Lex turned out to be Superboy's other half.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, because that didn't happen until Jeff Johns wrote Teen Titans in the mid-2000s. So, like, this is like a full 10 years or more before Superboy found out that he was part Lex.
Man, I don't think Jeff Johns gets enough credit for how good a fucking idea that is.
That was maybe the best thing he did on Teen Titans. That was not a great run, but that's a really cool reveal. There's also, people post this on Twitter occasionally. Back when this Superboy comic was going, Jeff Johns did write a fan letter guessing at Superboy's origin where he proposed he was half Lex. So, like, he's had the idea since he was young.
That's interesting. I like it. You
want to go to yours?
Yeah, let's go ahead and go to mine.
All right.
Mine is Peter Parker Spider-Man number 10. So let's go into kind of how this episode came to be, which is Alfie was talking about Venom like all fucking day a couple weeks ago on Twitter. He's like, oh, this is my favorite Venom design. This is the best take on Venom, and like all this stuff. I'm like, man, I remember my first comic book was actually a Venom comic. And here's the thing. I want to be very clear on this. I asked for Alfie's help because I couldn't remember what it was. I was like, can you help me narrow it down? It would have been like mid to late 90s, and it's got Venom in it where he shows up, and it's either Venom or Hydra Man shows up at the Daily Bugle like posing as a trades guy, where he's got a big water cooler tank and he's gonna replace it, and that's how he like sneaks into the building and starts shit up and kidnaps someone. I didn't even remember who the fuck he kidnaps. That's all I remembered of this fucking comic book. You know, just how I realized how big an ask that was of Alfie. If I just, it's like, Steve, what's the issue of Batman where the Joker, like, you know, poses as a clown at someone's birthday, and then comes in and, like, kills the family? You know how fucking hard that would be to narrow down? Like, not what else happens in the story, just that, like, very specific introduction of the character moment. And then on top of that, that's not even the introduction of the character in this issue. That's like something that happens halfway.
Yeah,
it's like a
halfway
page
through the book.
It's a fucking page of the comic book. And so Alfie's like going down the Hydra Man route, which, in all fairness to me, right? There turns out to be an issue of Spider-Man with Venom in it that's like right on the cover. It says The Return of Venom, but like in the big cover image is a fucking image of Hydro Man. So goddamn it. Getting my fucking wires crossed here. So it's very, because like I was thinking, oh, water tank, so maybe it was Hydro Man actually. I don't know. It's fucking, and the fact that Hydro Man and Eddie Brock are like the exact same fucking character design. It doesn't help. Black t-shirt, blue jeans, blonde hair, buff. Hydra Man needs a design update for his civilian clothing. So anyway, they probably have at this point. I can't be the first person that's noticed this. So anyway, so yeah, this is Peter Parker Spider-Man number 10. And like, yeah, I was a 90s kid. I liked Venom and Spider-Man. Who the fuck didn't? And so when I was like, can we go to the comic shop? I want to get a comic with Venom in it. Because of course I didn't understand how comics worked as like this long-running thing. I just was like, looking through either what they had on the shelf at the time, or I might have been even looking in backstock boxes. Not backstock, back issue boxes. And then I just saw this is a comic book with Venom on the cover. So there we go. This is a good Venom story to read. And there's so much like fucking Peter Parker soap opera bullshit going on in this comic. Like, just all the time that happens with Spider-Man. I don't know anything about this series as a whole, but this issue starts with, like, hyping up Carnage as just the most, like, badass, terrifying fucking killer villain in the world. And then Venom just shows up and, like, darts on him, basically. It's kind of disrespectful, honestly. Venom just shows up, it's like, we're going to take your symbiote back. Cletus, you just kill for fun. We kill those that have done wrong, and that's the fun. So you just, fucking Venom just, like, steals Carnage's symbiote, steals Carnage away from Cletus. And, like, absorbs it back into himself, I guess. And then he goes
Which
on,
is
like...
weird on its own, but we can get to that later.
Yeah, and then he goes on, like, a revenge rampage where he's gonna, like, kill Spider-Man, and he's gonna get revenge on J. Jonah Jameson for the Sin Eater stuff, which is all connected to Eddie Brock's origin. I don't feel like explaining that, because it's trash. And Spider-Man shows up to save the day, but he's Peter Parker's on the rocks with Mary Jane, and so he's trying to plan a special evening for her, but unfortunately it doesn't. He has to leave before she can show up. MJ gets picked up at the airport by some creepy cab driver who seems to know a lot about her. And you're thinking, oh, it must be Eddie, but apparently it's not. It's some other fucking weirdo who's, like, harassing them with phone calls. Apparently, in continuity at this point, Aunt May was living with Peter and MJ in New York, which, despite all the complications that adds, yeah, good on you, Peter, for, like, actually making a smart financial decision, or at least agreeing to one, instead of leaving your fucking elderly aunt in a house all by herself, just having her move in with you and your fucking on-again, off-again girlfriend. Probably makes more financial sense than anything else that I've ever seen done in a Spider-Man comic book. So that's all going down. Anyway, so Venom kidnaps J. Jonah Jameson. Spider-Man shows up. They fight. He tries to... They fight in the church. So this is just a weird issue. It feels like a very, like, retread of a lot of other stuff we've done with the Venom Spider-Man fight. But they're fighting in the church where Eddie became Venom again. And Spider-Man's like, oh, it worked once. I'll just ring these bells again, and that'll scare off Venom. It's like, haha, I took the clappers out. So you expected him to show up, like, or did you just go through every fucking church in Manhattan and take all the bells apart? Like, what? That seems complicated. But just as he's about to, and apparently Eddie's forgotten who Spider-Man is, which I feel is unfair. I know that's happened again since at this point, but, like, this feels pretty early days.
A lot, yeah.
This feels pretty early days. It feels unfair. It feels like it takes one of his advantages away a little too easily for my taste. I don't know the circumstances, but I didn't like that. So he's forgotten who Spider-Man is, and he's planning to just kill him without realizing, or without, like, taking in that information. But then suddenly the Carnage symbiote starts freaking out on him. He's like, no, I'll let you live for now while I go deal with this. I can kill you anytime I want. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure you can't. I'm pretty sure he's, like, proven that he's able to beat you, and that the only thing you really had going for you here was the element of surprise. So maybe you should just fucking, like, kill it. Like, he's already knocked out. He's unconscious. He's on the floor. Just just fucking pop his head like a goddamn cherry. What are you doing? And then he swings off into the night. This was a weird reread for me because, like, I thought I remembered, like, a plot line or an element in this that, like, just it's not there. I thought I remember Eddie talking about, like, him and Peter used to play together as children and stuff. I don't know where that, like, came from, but I very clearly remember that, reading that in this book. It was a very Mandela effect kind of moment. So it was very strange to get through this, and there's absolutely no mention of Peter and Eddie. It was weird because, like, you know, I've watched Spectacular Spider-Man and seen them call each other, like, bro and be friends in that show, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember that from the comics. So, Steve, what did you think of Peter Parker's Spider-Man number 10?
It's really hard to say anything about it because I feel like I just kind of like walked in the middle of an episode of a TV show and then left.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you know, like if the old school Marvel ethos was every issue is someone's first issue, they had long since abandoned that by the 90s. When did this come out? Like what?
99.
Late 90s? 99.
October
okay.
99 is the cover date.
Damn. Okay. That's funny. I thought this was fine. I just kind of wish I knew more of what was going on. It's written by Howard Mackey. I really like Howard Mackey. He was doing the Danny Ketch Ghost Rider stuff around this time period. It was probably maybe a little bit earlier. But he's a really good writer, and he's frequently gotten screwed over by just, like, editorial mandates on that book. So, like, when you just leave him to his own devices, I feel like he can be really good. And he's a really good writer when it comes to, like, describing the toll of violence in superhero comics. I feel like he was doing a lot of that stuff well before it became a popular trend to do, especially for Marvel. And in this, I like his voice. Sorry. I like his voice for Peter a lot. I don't love his Venom. But I think that's partly just because what you were talking about, where, like, I feel like Venom's plan doesn't make any sense, and it's kind of founded on this thing that doesn't make any sense on its own, because I thought the whole thing about Carnage was that Venom can't just absorb him back into himself. Like, he's tried that, and it doesn't work, and that's why they're
maybe
separate.
this is where he's tried that, Steve. Maybe this is the issue, where it's like, because it seems to be freaking out on him by the end. So it seems like maybe this is the point at which that is established in canon, is that Venom can't take Carnage back.
No, because I feel like that's a thing of when Carnage is first introduced, but Alfie's not here to explain Spider-Man history to me, so I don't know.
I don't know, I'm just saying, this is early enough. This is 99, so this is early enough in their story that this could be the establishing story for it. You don't know.
Maybe, I don't fucking know. I like John Romita Jr.'s art in this a lot.
Mm-hmm.
His style has kind of... He's always a fan of saying, like, he doesn't have a style because he just draws based on what gets done on time, which is admirable for comics, but I feel like that's kind of selling himself short. I feel like he's always had a style. It's just kind of, like, progressed from his dad's style to Marvel House style to his own style, and this is, like, I think 100% you look at this book and you're like, oh yeah, John Romita Jr. drew this. You don't even have to, like, take a second page or anything to tell. I like his Venom design a lot. I like that we're still... I don't know when this first happened, but I like it that it's a Venom without the giant tongue, that it's just the one with the big creepy smile and the giant teeth.
Mm-hmm.
All of that's really cool. I have no idea who the fuck this woman is that Peter's hanging out with. What's her name? Jill?
Yeah, she, like, catches
no
him.
idea. Yeah, I don't know what that's about. I don't know if there was a love triangle here somewhere at some point in history.
She is, like, a little overly familiar, isn't she?
Is she? A little bit. I'm like, something's going on here. I wish I knew.
Oh, let me help you. Fucking Peter's got his own, like, simp girl on the fucking hook backup. Like, let me help you get back together with Mary Jane. Like, we don't even like champagne. Do you think this is too much? Oh, no, you really need the champagne to set the mood. MJ's gonna come in. Peter... What, you know I don't even like champagne. What's this about? And then she's like, and then he'll be mine. Also, I got really confused on the page where Peter's like looking out the window and thinking about all the shit that's going on with MJ and Venom and whatnot, and I'm like,
Oh, I really like that page.
I mean, it's cool, but it's just like when the whole thing I know as a fan is that Venom knows Peter Parker is Spider-Man. He can come get him at any point, and you do like Peter Parker in a dark room, and there's just Venom there. It's like it's confusing, and maybe that was intentional, but I'm just going to note I was confused because I thought Venom was in the fucking room. And so to go that, and then like, oh no, Venom's swinging through the city. I'm like, wait, but what? Isn't he just in the room right there? Because like that was the thing. Is like he could come get him whenever he wanted because he knew Peter Parker was Spider-Man, and also the symbiote did not trigger the spider sense at this point in time.
Yeah.
And I so like literally he could just be in the room right now, and apparently not because he doesn't know Peter Parker is Spider-Man anymore. But still. I was a little confused by that. Not saying it was wholly bad, just saying I was confused as a modern comic fan, and probably as a kid too. I don't know. I like Venom's to-do list of kill my landlord, kill Spider-Man, get symbiote back from Carnage, kill Spider-Man, destroy the Daily Bugle, kill Spider-Man, kill Spider-Man. Especially when you consider this is the guy that like literally just pages earlier said we were never alike, Cletus. You killed anyone for fun. We kill those who deserve it, and that's more fun. Kill my landlord. Kill Spider-Man. kill J. James. Because he made me look bad.
Yeah,
yes. Deserve it. The lethal protector, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, we're well into lethal protector territory by this point, so that's pretty funny on its own. That I don't entirely understand what the fuck their conflict is at this point in Spider-Man's history, but it's interesting nonetheless. But no, I really like that page. I like because Spider-Man comics do this a lot, especially when you like start getting mired in the continuity of what particular one you're reading and like the number of problems Peter is dealing with at this point. So just having a page where like he's literally just walking around in the dark listing off everything that has happened and how awful everything is, and there's just like these background shots of the villain that he's going to fight looming over him. I just feel like that's like very classic Steve Ditko Stan Lee Spider-Man styling. So I like that a lot. And then immediately after that, like just conveniently fucking Venom is swinging outside this window. I like everything that Peter runs through in his mind of like, what, he couldn't swing by Avengers Mansion, he couldn't swing by Fantastic Four, it had to be fucking me on this night of all nights where I'm gonna see Mary Jane. Like I liked how that reads as just like the most Spider-Man thing of all time. That was a really cool sequence for me. The rest of the issue though, like it's weird because it built a lot of tension up through J. Jonah Jameson at the Bugle and like him almost unmasking Peter for a second. The fight with Venom on the rooftops is really, really good. I love the way that is drawn. And I feel like it ends on a pretty decent cliffhanger with like you've got that fight, you've got this stalker thing happening, you've got Jameson almost unmasking him. Like it really reads like if I just read this comic for the first time as a kid, I would immediately go back to the store and say, where's issue 11?
Yeah, maybe. I never got it. But it did hit, man. It's a good issue. I do remember really liking it as a kid. I just didn't know how comics work. I remember my mom reading this to me. Like, I didn't even read it myself. I remember my mom reading this to me and being like, well, the story just continues. It just continues infinitely. And I'm like, I didn't understand what that meant, you know? She's like, oh, they always end on a cliffhanger like this. I'm like, well, what? So I didn't understand that you could go back the next week and buy another issue kind of thing. So I don't know. This is fucking good shit. I like it. I'm a little surprised this is 99 because I would have been, if October of 99, if we got it like off the shelf and not through back issues, I would have been about 8, almost about to turn 9, so it was maybe a little old for her to be reading this to me. I'm a little surprised that this was, maybe I was like sick or something. because I just that is just a little bit on the old side for that. But I don't know. I was a very sensitive child. Uh, this is an interesting one. Fucking Cletus Cassidy getting built up so hard that just Venom coming in and wrecking his shit was pretty fucking funny though. Just in retrospect, because like that's just not their relationship anymore. In anything I've ever read, they're like they're not like equals, but they're just on such a level that they can't really fuck with each other. Is the way I kind of read it nowadays.
That's one of those things where it's like the legacy is informing the character more than like doing something unique or interesting with the character, where for a long time it sort of felt like that sort of uneasy tension between Carnage, Venom, and Spider-Man, where they could all come to blows at the same time, and that they weren't always on equal footing, was part of the fun of those stories. But then Carnage on his own got so popular that you just couldn't have that exist anymore. Like, Carnage could not function as a character with his popularity if the threat of Venom beating his ass existed in any substantial way. And so, like, now he just fucks off and does his own thing in the Marvel Universe, and Venom fucks off and does his own thing, to the point now where, like, stories involving the symbiotes involve Venom, but they almost never seem to involve Carnage anymore.
Yeah. Okay, Steve, you want to know what's fucking frustrating? Just our conversation, and like from the beginning, I could never have liked Marvel. Our conversation about, oh, I just want to go out and read issue 11. You know what happens in issue 11?
What?
Just a bunch of shit with the Avengers. I don't even think fucking Venom or Carnage or anybody is in it. It's just like, it's like we fucking like skipped a week. The 8th day, part 3 of 4 is issue 11.
I don't
so it's like
know what that is.
Exactly. It's the classic Marvel thing of just a fucking event interrupts the main story. Or maybe not, because issue 12 is Return of the Sinister Six, part 2 of 2. So, Jesus fucking Christ.
But like, that's just a superhero comic book thing. That's not a Marvel thing. Like, what Peter Parker Spider-Man is like what Grayson was, or what Nightwing and Robin were for a long time in the 90s, where they're satellite books. They can have their own story, and then when it's time to cross over, or when someone else needs a story told so that they can set other shit up, they just have to drop exactly what they're doing and go back and do their own thing. Like, Grayson is a great fucking comic. And then immediately it just gets swooped into whatever event was going on at the time, and then it has to go back and rebuild its status quo, and then it's great for like an issue, and then it just goes back and does the exact same thing. So like, I don't know, I think that's just the appeal of reading superheroes. Like, yes, issue 10 is great, I can't wait to find out what happens next. Well, never mind.
Issue 13 has some Venom in it, but I don't see anything like... Maybe it's all just in dialogue, but I don't see anything about Carnage and what happened there, so that's just funny. I don't know. I'll just keep going forward. Cry Venom. When Carnage Comes Calling is issue 13. Okay, I don't know. It's funny. It's very, very funny that like, oh yeah, can't wait to go out and read issue 11. Issue 11 has nothing to do.
You gotta love it. You gotta love the fucking superheroes. I have no fucking idea what's going on in any... Has there ever been a time in the existence of Aunt May where she didn't look like she was about to keel over and die any second?
Okay, you were talking about John Romita Jr.'s art in this, and I think everyone looks really, really good. He went too hard on Aunt May. It's too much.
I think it's just an Aunt May thing. I think the character is like, let me die.
Did you ever... You've listened to NPR. Do you remember the Diane Rehm show?
Yes, I do. Many an afternoon trip home was listened with that podcast. Or radio show. Yeah.
I swear to God, Diane Rehm, I was always worried was going to die mid-sentence because you could hear how old she was.
Fucking slow drool, yeah.
Yeah. And like apparently she had some kind of surgery on her voice and stuff. I'm like, good, brave for you for continuing on a career in radio, but still just like I didn't know that at first. So just I'd hear her interviewing people and I was just ready for now in page 7 of your Diane. Oh my god, call an ambulance. Dude, we were
It's like in
experiencing
Metal Gear Solid where they're just calling Snake.
Right. So I always thought that would happen with Diane Rehm. And then reading Aunt May in this book, I heard the voice of Diane Rehm because of just like how fucking old she looks. Like, he tried to draw wrinkles, but you know what she looks more like? She looks like fucking Dr. Zaius from Planet of the Apes.
Oh my god. I mean, you're right.
They're just like vertical wrinkles that look like fur.
It's weird because like he's John Romita Jr. has drawn a lot of Spider-Man, like a shit ton of Spider-Man. And as far as like reading his stuff goes, I saw him draw for JMS well before I went back and read any of his old shit. So like there's like a good 5 years or more between him doing this book and doing that book. But his Aunt May looks nothing like that in the JMS run. She looks like a normal person. She looks like she's been de-aged like 10 years. It's very odd.
You know something funny that kind of was hitting me as I was reading through this book? We don't actually see Eddie in full, I think, throughout the entire issue.
No, he's kind of silhouetted when he's walking into the Daily Bugle, but you don't ever actually see him do anything.
Yeah, it's all Venom or like Eddie in silhouette. Like even when he does the reveal to Cletus Cassidy, his like face is like over half covered by the Venom symbiote, and I'm like, as I was reading this, I'm like, are we about to reveal that fucking like Eddie Brock isn't Venom or something? Like, you know, he's saying all this Eddie Brock shit, but just it feels weird that we don't actually see Eddie at any point. It's like the exact opposite of the Topher Grace Spider-Man 3 thing, where, you know, it's like he had his face out too much, he didn't get to be Venom enough. This is like he's almost Venom too much, and we kind of need to see Eddie's face. Just kind of a weird thing.
It's a weird balancing act, too, where, like, to a certain extent, I feel like the appeal of Venom as a character, at least on Eddie, is there's a push and pull between Eddie's own, like, resentments and hatred and, like, what Venom is fueling into him. And, like, the Spectacular Spider-Man cartoon does a really good job of, like, showing the progress from Eddie Brock to Venom. But also, if you read the Rick Remender Agent Venom stuff, there's a lot of interesting stuff done with like the influence of the symbiote over the person. And I do kind of feel like you lose something when it's just monstrous ink monster, and there isn't more of the voice inside your head thing happening.
All right. I think that covers just about everything I had to say about this book. I was actually pleasantly surprised by how well it held up. Again, I was expecting it to be kind of trash, especially because, like, it's 90s with Venom. They were just pumping out everything they could get this character into. And it is kind of crazy that, like, my first exposure to comics was with someone who's, like, as fucking good as John Romita Jr., too. So, I don't know, fucking feather in my cap. I will say, I'll say this now before we talk about Alfie's book, but I will say, objectively, I had the best single issue, right? Like,
oh yeah, easily. Between the three, by far.
I don't know, it's just kind of funny. I had a really good one. It's not like top tier greatest Spider-Man comic of all time or anything, but I don't know, this one kind of fucking hit. Also, really like the cover. Fucking Venom holding Spidey and J. Jonah Jameson on a church. That's pretty dope. Still good cover choice. Like that. Let's be honest. 8-year-old Ian probably bought this book just because of the cover.
You know what,
and he could have gone wronger.
The cover slaps, and sometimes it sells the whole fucking book for you, man.
Yeah. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about Alfie's number one, or Alfie's first comic. which is The Spectacular Spider-Man Disassembled, number 19.
Yes, as far as I can tell, this book has nothing to do with Avengers Disassembled, but they just threw the logo on there for some reason.
I mean, Captain America's in it for a little while.
I mean, yeah, but that just means it's a Marvel book.
Okay, so summation for this one. This actually comes with a catch-up page. I don't know exactly when Marvel started doing that as its own independent page. But apparently there's a new villain running around named Adriana Soria, but she calls herself the Queen. And she's able to psychically control insects. She's able to control people that have like an insect mutation gene. And somehow she's triggered a mutation in Peter Parker to turn him very much back into the human spider. And he is slowly like transforming throughout the majority of this issue. So this is an interesting book in that Spider-Man does not get to do very much at all in his own book. This is mainly very much, middle of a story. The heroes kind of at their lowest point throughout this issue, and the issue is mainly just setting up all the stakes that are going on around here, which is that the Queen has a bomb that will kill 90% of life, human life, within a 600-mile radius, and leave her insects to control and people with this mutation that she can control and be their queen. And so Captain America and Nick Fury are talking about that, and that they've got to do something to stop it or plan for an evacuation of the entire East Coast. And then this is the part I love. She's triggered this mutation in Peter Parker in order to make him her mate. And I really do love this this line of dialogue. Just a kiss to make your heart beat faster. A little swapping of some very special saliva containing the right genetic material to initiate your change. You can be my Valentine, and if you play your cards right, I won't eat you afterwards. Just a joke, darling. I know you like jokes. I'm like, you know what? Kind of a fucking badass fucking Spider-Man villain moment. Not gonna lie, I kind of dug that. Fucking femdom Spider-Man villain. Let's go.
Yeah, no. I mean, like, fucking kinky Spider-Man is always where it's at. Not gonna lie.
I will say though, I am like legitimately disappointed by her design. At least for this issue, she is just kind of like hot chick leather dress, vaguely Asian coded. I don't know if that's intended or not to be her ethnicity in this. But like the fucking queen, she controls insects. Just let her be a giant, like, half-human spider bitch. Like, that would have been cooler, Like, give me some of that fucking arachne energy,
No, I mean, I feel that. I think part of it is just, and this is not an excuse, but just, like, context-wise, this is sort of that weird era in Marvel where, like, everyone was pared down a little bit. Avengers Disassembled was happening. We were kind of walking away from doing the big heroic superhuman stuff, and like everything became a lot more grounded. I mean, this is when like Luke Cage and Wolverine were butting heads, and they were just wearing like t-shirts and jeans and black leather outfits and stuff. So it's not surprising, is all I'm saying, where like the main villain of this is just like a chick in a dress, because that feels very Marvel of the early 2000s.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair.
Also, Paul Jenkins is also just like a little bit more of like a subdued writer anyway. He did a pretty decently long run on Hellblazer, and most of the other stuff I know he's done is like Marvel Knights or like horror comics and stuff. So the dude's just got more of a grounded sensibility to begin with. I would not be surprised if part of it was just like he just described her as like a woman in a black dress, as opposed to like giving him any instruction as far as super villainy goes.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. I'm just like, especially that she's like, oh, I'm gonna turn Peter Parker, I'm gonna turn Spider-Man into my husband by making him, the human spider again. And by the end of it, he's just a giant spider, which also disappointing. Not gonna lie, like it's less creepy when he's just a big spider. It's more creepy when he's just fucking transforming and shit. I like that better. It's a cooler vibe when he's this half human, half spider kind of fucking werewolf spider monstrosity. Um, so I'm a little disappointed by like the promise of the body horror only gets you so far in this. You really only get like there's some good images of Peter in this half man, half spider kind of thing. I definitely like the design we see for him throughout the majority of this book better than like the animated series one, which is I think the other like most popular like image of the human spider. I think this works just a little bit better for getting that body horror creep vibe to it, but they're both still pretty fucking good.
I really, really liked that whole sequence of like him just like agonizing over like what the fuck have I become. That's so good.
I think that like a lot of that works. It's just some of the other visuals and where things end up just kind of disappoints me. Again, I don't know anything about the Queen. Maybe she does kind of evolve and become something more interesting visually as the story goes on. The Queen, Marvel Spider Man. Okay, let's see. Google Images, you got anything for me? Does she get any cool upgrades? Or does she just stay a fucking... Okay. Maybe she does. Okay, she does actually eventually get to evolve. I don't know if that's in this story, but that's what she turns into eventually in the comics.
Oh, that's neat.
So I'm happy about that. Like, fucking spider kaiju thing. I'll take it. That's good. That's more the vibe. Wish she was just like that the whole fucking time, or at least like a smaller version of that. That'd have been cool. I don't know. I'm still a little disappointed by the look of her in this issue. Not gonna lie. Hot chick, no thanks. Spider fucking creepy woman thing, yes please. With all the Spider-Man multiverse stuff we've been doing for years, can I just get a universe where he never got past the fucking human spider phase, where he just got stuck like that, and now he's just this fucking, like, monster who has just these occasional moments of humanity break through as he's trying to, like, isolate himself from people and shit. God, I fucking need it in my life, man, so badly.
I guarantee you there's like a what if somewhere where that has happened.
I mean, sure, but like I want it like in continuity. I want like that version to get caught in the main universe or something, and so just every so often fucking Peter has to deal with this like fucking twisted Metal Sonic version of himself living in the fucking sewers.
Metal Sonic?
Have you not heard the Metal Sonic theory?
No.
Oh, Metal Sonic's introduced in the Sega CD game, which has you going back and forth in time between, like, a good future and a bad future and stuff. And Metal Sonic's from the bad future, and so the fan theory is that it's a roboticized Sonic that's, like, gone crazy and can't accept what's happened to him. So yeah, it's, like, the best fucking fan theory of all time.
Yeah, that's pretty fucking hype. I would love to that. I would love just like weird dystopian future Sonic like that. That sounds awesome.
I know, and again, just like fucking Peter Parker from another dimension that's just stuck in the main universe, and like main Peter Parker has to fucking deal with this bastardized version of what he could have become. But then like every so often, like you can't, like you want to just kill him, right? But you can't because every so often it does something good, It's a good idea. I'm gonna write that down.
Man.
Copyright Ian
Spider-Verse,
Harrington,
man.
2023.
I'm surprised fucking Spider-Verse hasn't done that one yet.
I mean, we've got the fucking Spiders Man in the comic and shit too. I didn't see him in Across the Spider-Verse, but there's so fucking many of them that it's possible he was in the background. I'm gonna choose to believe that. If I got fucking Spider Horse, then god damn it, I want Spiders Man. Spiders Man has contributed more to comic books than the Spider Buggy ever has. God damn it.
I'm sure for a certain segment of fans, those are fighting words.
I am ready. Give me all the smoke. I'm ready for this fight. You have no idea how important Spiders Man is to me. Like, fundamentally, I am going to base my entire personality off Spiders Man if he ever gets like a one shot.
The one thing that is nice, contrasting to your pick with Alfie's, is by the time you get into this era, I think it's safe to assume that like everyone is writing for the trade, so you're just getting like pretty outstretched, decompressed story arcs, but you're still getting like complete story arcs regardless. So like I'm sure there is like a full story to be told between however many issues it takes to go through this one Peter Parker story. And other Marvel characters may show up in between, but like I'm sure there's like a clear beginning, middle, and end that makes this part of that run. And I think Paul Jenkins had like a pretty decent run on Spider-Man. I've never read it, but I know he was on that book for a while at least. I remember when it was coming out back at the time. But it's interesting nonetheless, because I feel like this is a really good setup, and I feel like of the three books we read, this is the most where I feel like this is what I come to like a comic book single issue for anyway. Like you had the sort of quintessential first comic in a lot of ways, where it was in the middle of something. There was a really cool cliffhanger. It's talking about all this shared history that the reader kind of assumes you know, even though you don't. And so like it's a great book to just kind of give a kid and be like, okay, now go out into the world and buy Spider-Man comics, but they'll never quite hit this mark. Versus this, where I'm like, if you just gave me this issue, I could see myself setting very realistic expectations for what it's like to read a Marvel comic, where you read this and you're like, okay, so it's all just like these really decompressed arcs, and everything is super grounded, and like there's this weird house style for the coloring where everything looks kind of boring and blued out for some reason.
Unless it's sunset, in which case everything's boring and yellowed out.
Yeah, and everything's boring and yellowed out. But like they're slightly edgier, and there's something weird going on here, and then there's like random cameos from other Marvel characters, but they're not actually doing anything. Very, very quintessential Marvel experience. So I appreciate that. Also, the art for Captain America is incredible. It's giving Rob Liefeld energy, and I'm here for it.
You know something funny?
Just too jacked.
You know something funny? Between these two issues that came out, like I think over a decade apart. I'm not sure what the street date is on this one. 2004. So yeah, almost not quite a decade apart, like about half a decade. So we get to the scene with MJ and Aunt May on the roof, talking about Peter because Bechdel test, and I just find it really amusing that Aunt May is wearing not quite the same, but like the same palette outfit. Of a yellow shirt and like grayish pants of some sort, and maybe that's just the lighting that they choose, but like her sweater that she's wearing is very like colored yellow for this scene, so it's just kind of funny that like Aunt May apparently just has animation character wardrobe where she's always going to be like in vaguely the same outfit.
You know, the thing I was going to mention about that scene, too, is because I think this is, like, really the only point where MJ factors into it, but MJ in this looks like someone just ripped MJ from Ultimate Comics Spider-Man, or Ultimate Spider-Man back then. It's kind of funny. I know Ultimate for a long time was, like, as popular, if not more popular than the main title, so I wouldn't be surprised if, like, there was a point in one of Spider-Man's satellite books where, like, They decided to just make everyone look like the Ultimate Comics version.
I mean, maybe. I don't know. Not a real fan of some of the art in this. Like, I think it looks good for the monster design and stuff, but like, in particular, this scene of MJ and May on the rooftop. There's this panel where like MJ's neck looks really fucked up to me because her face is like too flat for the angle that the rest of her body is at.
Yeah, I see that.
Yeah, it's fucking
Where,
weird.
like, it looks like her neck is just way too fucking long. It's weird.
Yeah, like it looks like she was drawn to be, you know, kind of quarter, like or 3/4 exposed to the viewer, like the rest of her body. But then they just fucking like copied and pasted the face on top of it to create like a different expression. Like it also looks weirdly out of proportion with the rest of her body. I don't know, not a fan of that. The monster design stuff is good. Again, I like a lot of what we see Peter going through here. This is fucking good. And you were talking about the art for Captain America. Yes, very Liefeld. Like especially when he's like, you know, like you can get away with it if you put him like next to Peter or like Tony, because Tony's not like, you know, fit, right? Or as fit. He's like he's the guy in the suit, right? Or Peter is like he's lanky. So you can get away with it. But, like, putting him next to fucking, like, Nick Fury, who's also supposed to be, like, that jacked, square jaw kind of guy, is just really funny. To make Nick Fury look fucking puny next to Captain America is really amusing to me. Also, how does Captain America know how JFK died? That happened after he was frozen.
That's... Oh my god, you need to like go back and read old school Captain America comics from back in the day because
I refuse. No, I'm not doing it. You can't make me.
What I was gonna say is the thing about that is when they revive Captain America in present day Marvel continuity, it's only 1963, and so. At that point, like when he comes out of the ice in that first Avengers issue, and then towards the ongoing, which is also funny because back in the day, Captain America didn't have his own title. He had a title he shared with Iron Man, so you'd get an Iron Man story and a Captain America story in the same issue. And then when that book hit issue 99, they spinned off Iron Man and Captain America into their own books, and Captain America started at number 100 instead of number 1. But anyway, on those old school Captain America issues, World War II was like less than 20 years ago from his perspective. And so all of the people that were involved in it are still around. And so like there is this really strange energy to Captain America and Nick Fury's relationship in those old comics where Nick Fury is like, yeah, you got to die during World War II. You got to be the greatest generation. Then you get to come back and be a hero. Meanwhile, I lived through everything that happened in between, and I saw myself become greatest generation to getting protested because of Korea and Vietnam. And it's really fucking interesting to see that resentment boil up, especially when like World War II veterans are not just alive, but are still young. Like they're still like, if you went to war when you were 18, you would still be well around like middle age, if not younger. So that's really interesting just in the context of Marvel, but also because he was around since like 1963 forward, he actually saw a great deal of American history unfold in real time and probably has more answers than we would.
Yeah, and this is like where the thing of the Marvel sliding timeline comes into effect. And like it sounds good on some level, but then you get to like shit like this. I'm like, now how long ago did he come out of the ice? Because the Kennedy thing feels like at this point it's 2004, right? That's not a long enough gap for him, right? Like Captain America always came out of the ice like 10 years ago or something, or like 2 years ago or something, you know? Is the way his sliding timeline works. He was always like frozen in World War II, but he just recently came out of the ice. He's back and he's doing stuff, but it's not too long ago that he came back, kind of thing. And so fucking Kennedy, so like you're saying that he was there for Kennedy's assassination and he was in on the reason that it was covered up by the government, and I'm like, But that's not something Captain America should be cool with. Like,
well, he's not.
she's not the vibe.
90% of Captain America's stories after he got revived from the ice are America sucks. I fought for this. Why do I wear the flag? The president is a liar. That's literally 90% of Captain America comics.
No, I agree, but like in this instance, he's acting like it's a good thing that it got covered up, and like the reasoning that he gives
in general.
Yeah. So again, it's a weird fucking thing. Also, their reason for the cover up does not jive one fucking bit with just the attitude of the American military at the time of John F. Kennedy's assassination. They really didn't like him, and they were really wanting to like. You could go back and read a lot of the like documents and even like some of the transcripts of the conversations that Kennedy had with generals, and a lot of them were like, let's just fucking nuke Cuba. Let's just do it. Let's just fucking nuke the shit out of them. We've got the bomb. Let's just do it. And this is still like before they really understood the effects of radiation, so that would have just like the amount of fallout that would have happened to Florida and shit. I don't know. Of all the conspiracy theories I've ever read about JFK's assassination, no, it was to keep the peace that it got covered up was a brand new one. So I guess points for creative writing.
This is also like Marvel's always had like that world outside your window vibe to it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's like so hit or miss depending on like what you're trying to do, and depending on like what angle you're taking and where you are in history at that point. Where like this in this era, everything is like deep in the trenches of 9/11 and the war on terror, and the Patriot Act and its correspondences and stuff like Civil War, as would happen later. I don't know if this overlaps timeline-wise, but like in this era, Tony Stark was the fucking Secretary of Defense under George W. Bush. Like that's a whole run of comics that was happening at this time.
I love it. I'm so
it's
happy.
Insane. Absolutely insane time to be alive, man.
Everything negative that's ever been said about Iron Man pales in comparison to just showing that. You know, like what?
Well,
why don't they just show that more?
That's an interesting run, though. I actually met the writer who wrote that run because it's never actually been properly collected. And so, like, I was talking to him at a convention about it, and I was talking about like, oh yeah, you know, it's an underrated run, and like it's never seen the light of day and stuff. And then like I walked away and talked to my friend. I'm like, it's actually a terrible run, but I just felt bad for the dude. But no, it's an interesting run because there at that point, like I mentioned before, Marvel doesn't care about costumes anymore. They don't want to do the superhero stuff anymore, so everything's really grounded and real. So the writer was talking about how like he would take every excuse possible to see how many issues could you go without Iron Man armoring up. How often could you just have him like in boardrooms and in conference rooms and like talking to world leaders and presidents and stuff. And that run's interesting because you would think it's like horribly right-leaning, and it definitely can be, but the way Tony talks about deciding to join the administration in the context of that story is like he sort of anticipates the problems that are going to come with Bush's government and is trying to be there so he can be a check against those, which is also not a great reason to do it, but it's interesting that they were at least aware of the potential fallout at that point.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, that's a lot of context and stuff, whereas just showing fucking Iron Man shaking hands with George W. Bush, I feel like, is all you need for like the Twitter ownage to begin. You know.
I mean, this is true. I mean, as we all know, people on Twitter don't read comics; they tweet panels from comics.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like this image has kind of been a little forgotten in recent years, and maybe that one needs to make the fucking rounds again.
You know what? Maybe we'll just let it stay buried.
No.
Let's let it stay buried. I don't want
Steve,
the Twitter hive on this.
Be the one to do it. Just fucking put it back out there in the sphere. Let the chaos consume you.
I don't want the world to have to deal with that again, man. I can't. I lived through it. I lived through Director of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Secretary of Defense. Although Director of S.H.I.E.L.D. slaps. Director of
Okay.
S.H.I.E.L.D. is like one of the best Iron Man runs of all time. Anyway,
If you say so.
it's really good. It's really good. Anyway.
Uh,
So comics are good. I enjoy
yeah.
them.
Yeah, I don't know. This was an interesting one. I think like by default because mine was actually good and yours was terrible.
Yeah, mine
This
was
one
pretty bad.
has to fall in the middle.
Yeah.
But it was a fun read. Again, like some stuff of the era that I think makes it kind of low tier. Um, Disappointed by the lack of Arachne fucking femdom designs. But you know, we all have our burdens to bear, and this one's mine.
There's some kind of weird fetish here that if this comic was written today, you'd lean on completely into of the monster spider and the femdom, and I'm intrigued by the generation that grew up reading this, wanting to see a giant spider and becoming a furry.
Steve, stop talking about me to my face. Just talk behind my back like everyone else.
So Ian, what is it like when you put on the giant spider costume?
I mean, it's complicated. You gotta like get the rigging and all the like inverse kinematics to control the other legs with your legs. It's a hard time, man. Really, there's like a lot of art and crafts that goes into this, but not arts and crafts. I support the arts, Niles, not the crafts. Out of all of Frasier, I think that's still my favorite line.
Oh my god. Love that show. Anyway. No, good comic. Definitely middle of the pack between the three. Yours kind of fulfills this requirement the best of like what a first comic really should be, and mine's absolutely the worst for it. It's a miracle I grew up reading comics at all after that. um, and then Alfie's is right in the middle, and it definitely speaks to it's interesting to like look at the difference because all of our books are about 5 years apart from each other. Because mine was 94, yours is 95, his was not 2004.
99.
Or 99, yeah. So, yeah, 1994, 1999, and 2004. Yeah. So it's interesting to see like what's changed between the three of them and like what we've taken to be like quintessentially comic booky based on the stuff we've read. Where it's surprising on a certain level that like Alfie's and mine were reversed because like the big apocalyptic superheroes left and right dying and like legacy characters coming and taking up their mantle and everything trying to go really hard but not necessarily adding up. That sounds more like an Alfie comic than mine, really. Versus the slow horror story of Peter Parker contemplating what he has become with a hot chick in black dress sounds more like my thing.
Yeah. Whereas I've just always liked actual quality.
Yeah, exactly. It's perfect. Yeah, no, it's interesting experiment. I'm glad that you hijacked the topic for this because this was definitely interesting.
Yeah, for sure. I'm sorry to have done it to you, but it was like just kind of the vibe was right, you know. So
Yeah, you got to go with the vibe, honestly.
yeah. So I will, of course, bow down and let you take the next pick, sir.
All right. Does this count as a review or does this count as a topic?
Who gives a fuck? Who's gonna hold us to account in the fucking comments? In the comments, Steve.
I will. I demand to know these. Okay. Let's see. It's weird because I want to pick something to review, but I'm trying not to make you watch like a 3-hour movie again. Let's talk about staring at my bookshelf.
Best episodes of Geeky Gentlemen are always these. These are always top tier.
The ones where
Geeky
you're just
Gentlemen.
kind of like wasting time bullshitting until you can find
Mm-hmm.
like
this
those
is the kind of content that people subscribe for. This is
This
why
is the-
we're just so flooded with comments every fucking week right here.
This is pure, unadulterated, good content right here. This is where you get your ad read. You know what? Fuck it. Let's talk about something that I feel like I talk about constantly, and I know you guys have never read it and never plan to read it, so now I'm gonna make you read it, or at least I'll make you read it because I don't know if Alfie will be there. Let's talk about one of the Reckless books. I'm debating if we want to just start with the first one or read a different one. Because the best one is not the first one, but the first one is also still really good. Let's review... We'll do the third one. Let's review Destroy All Monsters.
Okay. That's going to be a disappointing episode for some people.
I know, right? Where the fuck is Godzilla? So you see, you clicked on the link, and you can change the thumbnail to match, but you clicked on the link because you were promised giant kaijus and Godzilla destroying shit. And what you got was the story of a sad surfer boy.
I'm so hyped. This sounds fantastic. I'm excited.
It's great. It's literally my favorite series. I fucking love it. Good times.
Okay, Reckless Destroy All Monsters, huh? Destroy All Monsters,
a Reckless book.
Okay. Sounds good. Everyone, thank you so much for watching. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
And I am Reckless indeed.
And we are your geeky gentlemen, and we will be discussing things.